We might be a small island, but we've got a big history. Everywhere you stand, there are worlds beneath your feet. And so every year, hundreds of archaeologists across Britain go looking for more clues. Who lived here, when, and how?
You can even see the architecture of the bone inside the jaw there.
Archaeology is a complex jigsaw puzzle, drawing together everything from skeletons to swords, temples to treasure.
She's got a very cartoon-like face, hasn't she?
From Orkney to Devon, we're joining this year's quest on sea, land and air. We'll share all of the questions and find some of the answers as we join the teams in the field, digging for Britain. For me, the Tudor age conjures up images of magnificent kings and queens, daring adventurers, and an explosion of literature under writers like William Shakespeare. But this period was about much more than just those personalities. It was a time of enormous political, social and economic change which heralded the beginning of modern Britain. And I'm hoping that archaeology can offer us fresh insights into the Tudor world and even provide us with glimpses of the everyday lives of those who witnessed that momentous era. I'm searching for the vanished world of Tudor Britain.
It's just beautiful.
I get hands-on with discoveries at Shakespeare's house.
I want to find Shakespeare's sock. I so want to find Shakespeare's socks.
Learn about the popcorn of Tudor theatre. And investigate a mysterious wreck from this age of exploration and trade. My journey begins in the heart of London with a love story and the birth of British theatre. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Perhaps the most famous line from the greatest love story ever written, and I'm sure, like me, you can remember the first time you read or watched Romeo and Juliet. But the very first time those words were spoken was here, at the newly discovered Tudor Theatre in London's Shoreditch. By a remarkable coincidence, as this site was being cleared to make way for a new theatre, the remains of a much older theatre were discovered. It wasn't just any old theatre, but London's original Tudor playhouse, where Shakespeare first became an actor and began his career. Morning, Jo. Hello.
Hi, Alice. Good morning.
Jo Lyon of the Museum of London Archaeology Service is supervising the dig. Her team have just 6 weeks left to excavate the site and learn all they can before it's covered over.
So this is the very first place where Shakespeare worked as a playwright?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much here. There's literally metres of Tudor archaeology.
Really?
This is, actually, it is the most important site I've ever done in my life.
The dig is a real jumble of medieval, Tudor and later archaeology.
A few bits of glass and pots coming out.
And they think they've discovered the remains of a pub, which may have been part of the theatre complex. But what's really exciting the archaeologists lies in the far corner, the remains of one small but significant section of the theatre's floor.
Now we're standing exactly as an audience member would have stood back in the day. We're standing at the back of the yard. You can buy a cheap ticket and go and stand in the yard and watch the play, or you can sit in the galleries. And you'll see that the floor slopes slightly in that direction, and that's on purpose so that you can have a better view.
So that people at the back can still see over the heads of the people in front. And what about this wall here? Is this the foundations of a wall?
So this is the edge of the galleries. The galleries would be coming up behind us,
Yeah.
off of this foundation wall, and we'd be stood at the back. And that means the stage would have been sort of over there, perhaps 10 metres away from here.
Isn't that amazing? 400 years ago, there were people standing exactly where we are, watching Shakespeare.
Looking at a young William Shakespeare performing Romeo and Juliet. You know, for me, that's amazing.
It does send a bit of a shiver down the spine, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're discovering fragments of pottery all the time, but amongst them are some really interesting objects, including this almost intact wine goblet, which dates to exactly the time of the theatre.
That's really lovely. That's such a gorgeous colour.
It could perhaps have been a stage prop or belonged to a theatre goer.
Just a couple of days ago, we had this amazing find, which is an absolutely complete jug. And there's not a flaw in it. There's no chip out of it, nothing. So they're called Bellarmine or Bartman jugs.
Yeah.
And they all have this bearded male face on them.
Yes,
which
it's
is,
great.
yeah, it's really distinctive.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's just
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's got
fantastic
such
to
a
have a
nice
piece of
feel
that
to it as
intact.
well, hasn't it?
So what would this have been used for? What would have been in it, do you suspect?
Beer.
Beer. So possibly someone buying their beer, making their
I
way
hadn't
to the
thought of that,
theatre.
but yeah, why not? It could work.
Well, the digging that's going on all around me will finish in just a few weeks' time, and then the site will be handed over to the developers, and very fittingly, a new theatre will be built here. We're just so privileged to get this glimpse into Shakespeare's world, because despite the fact the Tudors were so influential in shaping modern Britain, they're not an easy bunch to track down. In later centuries, many of the old Tudor buildings fell out of fashion and were either completely renovated or pulled down, erasing much of our Tudor past. And since Victorian times, the fashion for deep cellars has obliterated many traces from earlier periods beneath the ground as well. So today, there are only fragments of Tudor Britain left behind, even in this, the capital of their kingdom, London. The River Thames was of vital importance to the Tudor kings and queens. London was firmly placed at the centre of their political power, and they ruled their kingdom from a series of palaces dotted along the river. Westminster, however, was not the real seat of Tudor power. That was several miles downriver, at Greenwich. This palace was located on the riverfront, at the site of what is now Christopher Wren's iconic Old Royal Naval College. If I asked you to name a Tudor palace, chances are you'd say Hampton Court. But the palace that once stood here was much more important and much more interesting. But it's been largely erased from public consciousness. We've only just begun to understand the grand scale of the palace here, thanks to a series of digs over the last 30 years. Julian Boucher has been closely involved with revealing this forgotten Tudor world.
The Tudor palace, built by Henry VII, was one of the greatest of the new palaces of the time. And because of Henry VIII himself, who was in fact born here. He was born probably over in this corner here.
Right.
He married his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, in the church of a friary just over here. He married Anne of Cleves right over at the other end of the private chapel. His daughter Elizabeth was born over here. It's very connected with Henry VII, Henry VIII, Elizabeth. They're all here. You can almost feel them around here.
Archaeological finds made at the palace can tell us more about the lives of the Tudor kings and queens who lived here.
We've got a Tudor tile here that came from the Chapel Royal that we excavated in 2005. And it's the private chapel of the palace. It's on this floor, if you like, that Henry married Anne of Cleves.
Right. The Tudors used a potent new symbol to stamp their authority on Britain, the Tudor rose. That looks very Tudor to me, this rose. What is it?
It's a lead cast decoration Tudor rose with even traces of gilt around the side, and there would actually have been these all over the ceiling.
So these would have been
main
colourful?
rooms. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
indeed, yes.
It's a real stamp of Tudor identity,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Saying, this is our palace, Greenwich Palace, the centre of England. We're here to stay. This is Tudor, this is us.
There's nothing of those buildings remaining up here now, but down amongst the shifting mud and gravel of the Thames foreshore, there are tantalising traces of Greenwich's Tudor past. On the the foreshore in front of where the palace once stood, a team from the Thames Discovery Programme think they may have found a structure that linked the palace to the river. Leading the team is Natalie Cohen.
Natalie.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
So what have you got here down on the shore?
We've picked up a whole series of timbers running along the front of this wall here. We think it's part of a jetty structure that may have related to the royal palace, sort of immediately behind us here.
So what would this have been in the jetty?
It appears to have been part of a base plate, I would think, pegged to the foreshore or pegged to another piece of base plate through those peg holes there.
You can just imagine the royal barge landing here and Henry VIII or Elizabeth disembarking with a fanfare surrounded by courtiers. This now mundane stretch of the river was once the most exclusive in London.
It's not just structures like piers and jetties that can be found here on the Thames foreshore. There's archaeology literally everywhere you look. There's pottery, bone, shell, fragments of clay pipe. It's probably one of the richest veins of archaeology anywhere in Britain.
There are other people looking for clues here on the foreshore, the mudlarks. They have a special licence that allows them to dig for the historical objects that litter the Thames beaches. Over the years, they've made some remarkable discoveries. You might think they'd be using metal detectors, but in fact they work by hand because the sheer quantity of metal here makes detectors useless.
We've got an Elizabethan fastener there.
Yeah.
If you can imagine on your jacket, this would actually fasten like that.
Ah, like hooks and eyes.
Yeah, it's a fastener. So that is actually
So that's
a fastener.
Elizabethan?
It's Elizabethan. And then on top of that, these are in abundance down here. These are Tudor pins. A woman of distinction had 1,000 pins on her. I think Elizabeth I had 2,000 pins on her. Now,
Doing what?
well, for hair, for clothing.
Yeah.
An Elizabethan ruff had 150 pins plus on it. And these are Tudor lace ties. So exactly the same as you get on your shoelaces.
Oh, yeah.
Like on jackets, on shirts and stuff, where you'd have crisscrosses of like leather thongs and stuff. These would be on the end, so they could be threaded.
Well, the tide has come in now and covered up all of that archaeology on the Thames foreshore. It's disappeared, very much like Greenwich Palace itself has disappeared from public consciousness. But we know now, not just from history, but from archaeology too, that this was the spiritual home of the Tudors. The raising of the Mary Rose in 1982 was one of those rare events that's etched into the national consciousness. But the recovery of the hull, along with thousands of artefacts and hundreds of bones, was just the beginning of a 30-year project that's still going on today.
OK, well, if you'd like to come in here, Alice, this is going into our holiest of holies, our Holy Grail.
Christopher Dobbs has been closely involved in planning the new Mary Rose Museum, which for the first time will display the objects and the hull together.
Baskets and barrels and chests and fantastic bowls and plates. But this one, this absolutely superb bowl here, I think that this is probably a mess bowl.
Right,
and to actually serve individually into plates or bowls to 500 down in the ovens would have been just too difficult.
Yeah.
So they almost certainly transferred the food from one whole mess into a bowl like this. And that then led us to possibly identify this. I mean, it might look like a very minor object, but it could well be a mess tag. So you'd almost have like a luggage label, because they may have cooked actually in cloth bags in the cauldron, because that would mean you could keep all the food for 8 or 10 people together, and you could tie like a luggage label onto this. And that's what they were used in later wrecks.
Something's been tied
Yes,
down there.
it was definitely a tag of some sort.
Yeah.
It's almost overwhelming being surrounded by the worldly goods of 500 men, all interred in one catastrophic moment. There's everything from dice to musical instruments.
Look at that one, that's absolutely perfect.
And even the combs they use to get rid of their lice.
I mean, look at that. I can't believe that's a Tudor dagger handle, knife handle. It's just beautiful. Even mundane objects like grindstones used to make flour on board have a haunting quality to them.
Many people think that the Mary Rose is something, the project is something that finished 20 years ago or something, but it doesn't, you know. Daily we're finding out new things and new stories and being able to tell things in new ways.
There's just a phenomenal number of objects recovered from the Mary Rose. Look at these beautiful longbows, there are hundreds of them. And of course, we don't just have the personal objects that these people carried around with them. We do actually have the skeletons of the people themselves. During the excavations, the remains of 179 individuals were carefully recovered. As an anatomist, these bones provide me with a unique insight into the lives of these men. I can see some interesting things. I'm meeting Dr. Alex Hildred, who's a curator at the Mary Rose Trust, to uncover the stories of these men.
There were particular places which must relate to blocking of access routes to getting off the ship, where you've got 20 or 30 individuals and far more bones than you can actually put into those individuals.
People fighting to get off the sinking ship.
Especially as there was netting across the only really open bits of the ship, had anti-boarding netting. I think it would have been horrendous trying to get off the ship. Gun ports were so tightly fitted to their guns that you wouldn't have been able to get through those easily. And
Did anybody manage to get off?
About 35 survivors, but then people didn't swim naturally. It was quite rare to be a swimmer, so 35 survivors.
35 out of how many were there?
415 listed.
The men on board were there to fight, and many of them would have wielded longbows, which were amongst the most feared weapons in the medieval world. One skeleton in particular provides a direct link to these devastating bows.
This chap was found pretty much by himself in the hold of the ship, in the bow. But just literally above him was a wrist guard with the arms of England on it. So, you know, it's interesting to suggest with one of the tallest individuals who's very robust that, you know, he may well have been an archer, and that's what's been suggested in the past.
He's incredibly well built. Now, some of that's going to be genetic, but some of it might be what he's actually doing with his body as well. But the skeleton has got this rather interesting condition at the shoulder where the tip of his shoulder has failed to fuse. I mean, what we're looking at is the end of the scapula, which starts off as a separate little bone like this, but should fuse during development. But here, in an adult skeleton, it has stayed separate. And there's been a suggestion that this is to do with heavy use of the shoulder.
Well, archers, well, anybody, any male in England at the time would have to shoot a bow at least once a week from the age of about 7. So if somebody was good, needless to say, they probably would have been encouraged to do it more than once a week.
Knowing that archery was widespread, I suspected other skeletons might reveal a different telltale sign of the damage that archery might cause. So this here is evidence for what we call rotator cuff disease, so this frilly bone here with the little holes in it, the pitting in it, which looks like osteoarthritis. Now, it's not osteoarthritis because it's not happening on the joint surface, but it's happening where the muscles insert that stabilise the shoulder. And this is associated with stress and strain on those tendons. We get rotator cuff disease happening in young people when they are cricketers or baseball pitchers.
Or archers, maybe.
Maybe. It is such a privilege to look at the bones from the Mary Rose. It's something that I've wanted to be able to do for a long time. And I think coming here and looking at the collection as well, I'm completely bowled over by it. There are so many objects and so well preserved from the wreck. And they really do make sense when you look at them all together, when you've got the ship and all those objects within it and the people themselves. We've got this very complete picture of the lives of these mariners in the Tudor period. I'm in West Wales on my way to the site of Strata Florida Abbey, which in its heyday in the medieval period was among the most important religious places in the whole of Britain. Strata Florida stood in the shadow of the wild and remote Cambrian mountains, far from the bustling towns and cities of Tudor Britain. It was founded by Cistercian monks striving for a life of hard work and solitude. Not much of their great abbey remains today. All that can be seen are the desolate ruins of the abbey's once grand church and its famous archway. But in a field nearby, a team from the University of Wales Trinity St David have spent the last few summers slowly uncovering the remains of this Cistercian monastery. What they've found lying hidden in the landscape is truly remarkable. Leading the team are Professor David Austin and Dr Gemma Bizant. They've undertaken a geophysical survey which has revealed evidence of the buried abbey site.
So is that where we are just there?
This is where we are here, in this corner.
We've got the
abbey. The abbey church is
over there.
over there. But also, I mean, there's an enormous building complex just behind you, and another really large complex over by the river there.
Huge industrial activity down here. You see these enormous signals there.
So what do you think this is?
Well, we think it's ironworking because we've excavated an iron forge over here. So it's a whole of this southern area at some point is processing metal coming out of their mines, and their mines are just up on the hill slope over here.
It's amazing to think that this agricultural landscape was so busy.
Yeah.
It full of industry, full of people.
Exactly. You know, this would have been a really busy place.
This summer, the team are hoping to reveal the full scale of the abbey and also to find evidence of the great events it bore witness to.
I hadn't realised how important Strata Florida was, but the whole of this valley would have been home to a massive monastic community, and we're just starting to get a real feeling for the extent of that from the excavations here.
The excavations have uncovered the foundations of a huge stone building, which the team believe is the Great Gatehouse guarding the entrance to the abbey. Gradually, the dig has begun to reveal its original layout. You can just make out the plan of the building from the remaining walls. The gatehouse would have dominated this flat valley floor, and the road the gatehouse guarded would have stretched to the abbey church in the distance. You really get a sense of how visiting dignitaries would have felt, confronted by this imposing structure. The gatehouse dig has yielded some evocative finds which hint at the piety of the monks who once called this place home.
We've got a nice find from inside the gatehouse. This piece of bath stone that probably would have lined the archway.
Yeah.
And you can see here, if you look very carefully, an incised cross.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a good luck talisman. We think people would have just touched that as they passed through the gateway on their way into the Abbey Church.
Other finds remind us of the great wealth the monks enjoyed, which they lavished on their grand buildings.
Are these floor tiles here?
These
They're
are floor
lovely.
tiles here, yes. You can see this nice one shaped like a griffin or a dragon, if you like. You can see the wings and the head. And we know it was an impressive building. It was a large building, so maybe it had this large, impressive floor.
You tend to think of Cistercian monks seeking out solitude, finding some remote corner of the Welsh countryside. Now, it certainly is that today, but it wouldn't have been like that in the medieval period. And those monks were incredibly wealthy landowners, controlling all the agricultural land around here, as well as the lead mines. And the wealth they accumulated would be their downfall.
After divorcing his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, Henry had set himself on a collision course with the Catholic Church. The Pope excommunicated the king, and Henry responded by declaring himself the head of his own church. The break with Rome was final.
After Henry's schism with Rome in 1534, the time had come to finally crush the abbeys, which Henry's ministers had described as bastions of corruption and papal power. And rather conveniently, the king could seize the monastery's wealth for himself.
Here at Strata, Florida, and across the country, the crown seized the monks' wealth and land. The king then sold off the monastery's assets quickly to free up much-needed revenue.
The greatest beneficiaries of this process were the middling gentry, who now had the land to create new estates. Evidence for this lies just beside the abbey ruins.
So what have we got here?
Well, this is part of the arrangements of the gentry house, which lies behind us here. It's now a farmhouse, but it was a gentry house, probably originally built around 1600.
And when you say a gentry house, who were these gentry? Who would have been living in that house?
It would have been a member of the Stedman family. They come with the Earls of Essex here in the early part of the 16th century. And the Earls of Essex acquired the lands of the abbey, cheap off the crown, and then the aristocrats sell on to the local gentries, and so this money filters down through the system.
And indeed, a lot of the houses in the surrounding area used the abbey as a quarry and took stone from there.
So it's not surprising that, in fact, the abbey is in such a ruin and there's not much of it surviving. It is surviving, but it's not there, it's here.
No, it's a quarry. That's what, it's an asset. We're in the early stages of capitalism. You don't leave assets lying around the landscape doing nothing, you strip them.
Due to the actions of Henry VIII, the landscape and belief system of Britain had changed forever. Strata Florida represents this change in microcosm. A new Protestant church was built right next to the ruins of the Catholic abbey.
It's a sweet little church. It's a bit of a contrast to what the abbey church would have been like.
Yeah. Abbey church, massive, hugely ornate, full of sculpture, full of vivid paint. And you come in here, and this plainness and this simplicity is a wonderful counterfoil to all that glory and magnificence that lay in that church on the other side of the wall. It's very much a secular power. And that's one of the great marks of Protestantism. There is an organised church, but it's a state church, and the head of that church now is a secular authority, is a secular king. That's what Henry VIII delivers.
We can only guess at what the monks who once lived and worked here must have made of the dissolution. Their lives were torn apart and their world turned upside down.
The ruined monasteries that lie scattered across the British landscape provide a lasting reminder of the dissolution. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in British history. Not only did ordinary people find themselves living in a Protestant country, they also witnessed an unprecedented redistribution of wealth and land that would have far-reaching consequences for our island nation. It was during the Tudor age that we began to look beyond our own shores to the New World. After Columbus discovered America in 1492, waves of daring merchant adventurers set out on voyages of discovery to find new lands and boundless wealth. And those voyages are all the more remarkable when you consider that those men were travelling to the very edges of the known world.
The remains of one of these merchant ships is now being preserved at a saltwater lake in Portsmouth. Today, a team of divers is going to inspect it for signs of decay.
Well, this is what we've got to do today, guys.
Gustav Milne has played a key role in researching this ship.
Time waits for no man. What are you waiting for?
The ship was originally discovered in a channel in the Thames estuary during dredging and then moved here for safekeeping. If the ship was simply brought to the surface, it would soon begin to rot away. By studying the remaining timbers, it's been estimated it was a sizable merchant vessel of up to 300 tons and 80 feet in length. Perhaps surprisingly for a merchant vessel, they discovered 4 cannon at the wreck site. You can just make out one of the surviving gun ports. These ships carried merchant adventurers across the globe and needed protection in uncharted waters. Despite all we know about this wreck, its precise identity remains a mystery. However,
a vital clue was found on one of the recovered cannons. A team from the Royal Armouries, led by Phil McGrath, discovered an intriguing link with the most powerful financier of the Tudor age, Sir Thomas Gresham.
The first thing that struck us was on the surface, quite clearly, we have the T and the G for Thomas Gresham. And then above that, we have the family crest in the form of a grasshopper.
Gresham's legacy can still be seen in London's financial heart. The dissolution of the monasteries released a huge amount of capital into the British economy, and that money eventually filtered down to entrepreneurs like Sir Thomas Gresham. It was men like Gresham who would help create the City of London that we know today. He founded the Royal Exchange, which was the forerunner of today's stock exchange. Sir Thomas Gresham worked directly for the Tudor kings and queens and even helped save Britain from bankruptcy by manipulating the foreign exchange markets. So the Gresham ship provides us with a tangible link back to the beginnings of modern capitalism. In the labs of University College London, they're working to discover more about the ship's role and her crew. Many of the artefacts recovered are metallic, and during a reaction with salt water, some of these objects have become encased by what archaeologists call concretions. By removing these concretions, the team hope to reveal the secrets of the Gresham ship.
Processing this work is dirty, messy, heavy work. We're using large tools, not delicate scalpels, and we're creating a lot of mess.
A huge variety of objects have emerged from within the concretions.
Now this, I think, is the most exciting find that we've discovered from the concretions. And what we have here, we have an additional cannon, which is represented by this powder chamber.
That is fantastic. That really is a find and a half. Worth all that bashing.
We thought we had 4 cannons. We have an additional powder chamber now, which suggests that there was another cannon on board.
Their research has shown just how heavily armed this ship was. And it's also revealed the cargo, which needed such formidable protection. They've discovered numerous metal ingots, some of which are solid lead. These would have been very valuable and vital for industry and warfare.
This is the first time I've seen these ingots, and these are, one, extremely heavy. Just get a load of that.
No, I can't, sorry.
I can't lift that. And we've got 3 of a cargo of potentially 2,000 of these ingots. Imagine 2,000 of those in a ship. That is a robust vessel.
But some of the most moving objects are those that tell us about the ship's crew.
The small metal finds associated with the concretions, I think, have been particularly exciting. We have a couple of spoons, silver spoons, tableware, possibly from the captain's table. They're fairly high-status objects. So what do you make of this?
Wow. Is this his candle holder?
The other possibility is as a salt holder.
The intriguing finds which the team at UCL carefully smashed out of those concretions provide us with a snapshot into bustling Tudor London. You can just imagine the Gresham ship sailing up the Thames, laden down with iron, tin and lead. These ships brought prosperity to the city, and they fueled whole new sectors of the economy, like entertainment, which sprang up in a big way to help the Londoners spend their hard-earned cash. This is Stratford-upon-Avon, the birthplace of a man who would directly benefit from London's new prosperity, our most celebrated playwright, William Shakespeare. His plays and poems are the most well-known and widely studied works of literature ever produced, and his legacy is immense. Our everyday language is peppered with words and phrases from his writing. But despite all that fame and influence, the man himself remains an enigma. Only a few fragments of evidence survive from his lifetime. This summer, the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust are hoping that archaeology can shed some new light on this remarkable man. They're digging at the site of his last home, New Place.
We're nearly at the first stage.
Richard Kemp was involved in organising the dig and has brought me to the city's Guild Chapel. This medieval church would have stood right next door to Shakespeare's house and today provides us with a fantastic bird's-eye view of the dig.
Now, Shakespeare's house basically occupied this space.
So what would the house have been like?
Well, according to the historic sources that we've got a C-shaped house around an open courtyard.
But there's not much evidence of this C-shaped house at the moment.
No, there isn't, because the whole thing was knocked down in 1702 by the construction of a Georgian mansion.
The area at the back of the site is exciting the archaeologists because it's here that the house's rubbish would have been buried. There's a real mix of archaeology here and the team have found 14th century pottery right next to 18th century rubbish. An intriguing feature has emerged, a large, mysterious pit. Kevin Coles, the lead archaeologist on site, and Richard have conflicting theories as to what this is.
I think it's a pit that's obviously been used to burn something.
Right.
And we're digging it out now to see if we can find the bottom, where hopefully there's charcoal and lots of burning that we can find evidence for.
Richard has a more intriguing theory. He thinks it's a filled-in well.
If it is a well, it goes deeper, and the stuff's waterlogged. And when it's waterlogged, you get even more evidence preserved, or all the organics, like the socks. I want to find Shakespeare's sock. I so want to find Shakespeare's socks and shoes and stuff that, you know, gets thrown away and normally rots down.
Yeah, I suppose we're familiar with the idea that things survive in peat bogs, but equally well, things might survive in the bottom of a well.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, maybe this is just a pit, but if it is a well, it will take the team a while to get down to the waterlogged levels where there could be surviving Tudor rubbish. Have you ever done any archaeology before?
Nope.
Are you enjoying it?
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's absolutely wonderful.
Just being here, you really get a sense of the excitement and passion of everyone on site, all hoping to find something Shakespearean.
I mean, we don't do pot washing all the time. We do troweling as well.
But you can say fines processing. That's always
Fines processing.
Better.
It does.
Yes,
you're right.
Washing pots.
Yes, it certainly does.
It pretty much gets no better than this, really. You normally dig sites which are Roman or Iron Age, and you can't really put yourself into the shoes of the people who lived and worked on that site. But the archaeology of this particular site is just all about one man, and it's his life and times, and you can really begin to feel you're linking to the person as we're excavating down through material which he would have walked on or threw away.
Yeah. Kevin and the team have already made some fascinating discoveries.
We've got this stone roof tile here with the hole where the nail would have been to hold it in place, and that begins to build a picture of what the building may have looked like. So you've got fantastic yellow stone tiles on the top. We're also finding more sort of domestic household objects.
Is that a plug?
It is a plug. It is indeed a copper plug. Then we move on to more Tudor pottery now. So you've got this green glaze Tudor cooking pot with burning on the bottom.
So this pot was put over heat.
This was used. Yes, exactly.
You can see it. Yeah, you can see the edge coming out there, almost like a skillet.
Exactly, like a frying pan, and that's perfectly in line with the sort of 16th century date that we're looking for, really.
Could have been used by Shakespeare.
You could be holding something that's been touched by William Shakespeare. Yep.
Shakespeare only lived here at New Place for around 20 years. Archaeologically speaking, finding traces of him is going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack, but nevertheless, it's so exciting to be able to dig here where we know he lived and where we imagine we might be able to get a closer glimpse of the bard himself. This site was first dug by the Victorians in a time before archaeology was a rigorous modern discipline.
Rather intriguingly, they built a number of puzzling walls and sealed brick boxes to preserve what they found. You can feel the buzz of anticipation as the team prepare to open one of these boxes.
Here we are basically excavating the cellar area. These are all these almost brick boxes. So we're just about to open the last one of them and see what we can find.
Really exciting.
So should we?
So it's like the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb.
Almost.
I know how Howard Carter felt. That's the side, I think.
It's thrilling to think that after 150 years, its contents will be revealed.
Snails have got in there.
Snails?
Well, not exactly like Tutankhamun's tomb, but there is something else in here.
That's interesting.
So, Kevin, what do you think we've got here?
What I think we've got here is 1702 cellar walls of the property that replaced Shakespeare's house on this site. Whether any of these bricks are reused from Shakespeare's house, we'll have to look at.
So these could be Tudor bricks, but they've been reused?
Yes, basically the thinness of these bricks suggests that these were quite old. So these might be 16th century bricks, Tudor bricks.
It definitely feels like we're getting closer, but Shakespeare seems to be just out of reach here at the dig.
Shakespeare didn't leave much evidence behind for historians, so the few documents that survive have proved vital in piecing together what little we do actually know about his life.
I've come to the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust archives to see a key piece of evidence that tells us both about New Place and the man himself. Dr. Paul Edmondson is a leading authority on Shakespeare's life and works.
This is known as the New Place Fine, and it established Shakespeare's legal entitlement to the property, and which Shakespeare pays £60 for. And because the purchase deed was usually half the cost of the overall property, we suspect that therefore Shakespeare paid £120 for New Place.
That must have been a decent amount of money back then.
Quite a lot in those days. Just remember that a schoolmaster at that time earned £20 a year. It just kind of gives you the scale of the investment. And a kind of juicy fact about this particular purchase is that the person who lived there before Shakespeare was murdered by his son, Fulk Underhill. He was executed at Warwick, and the surviving son, Hercules Underhill.
Fantastic
Isn't
name.
that fantastic? And it is the one who's involved in this purchase deed. It's the biggest privately owned residence in Stratford.
Yeah. And Paul, even though this isn't a document that Shakespeare wrote himself,
no,
we can imagine that he would have held it in his hand.
Oh, absolutely. He saved money on it too, because you'll notice that there's a space here for a grand capital letter, which has never been filled in because it'd been more money, which is good to know. Like, paid my 60 quid, that's enough, thanks very much.
Well, the team haven't found anything that can change our understanding of Shakespeare just yet, but I do feel I've got a sense of this man, his wealth and his thriftiness. And there's another place where clues about his life can be found.
Like many young men of his time, Shakespeare left his home in the provinces and came here to London to seek his fortune. The streets weren't exactly paved with gold, but nevertheless, it was here, in the thriving city, that he made his name.
We've already seen Shakespeare's earliest theatre being excavated, but discoveries at the Rose and the Globe playhouses in the late 1980s have helped build a picture of the world in which he lived and worked.
This very ordinary-looking building contains an extraordinary archaeological collection. It's the Museum of London's Archives, and it's the largest stores of its kind in Europe, housing over 750,000 individual objects, including those found at the Rose and the Globe playhouses.
I'm here to see Julian Boucher, who has led the research into these playhouses.
Julian, we meet again.
Hi, Alice.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you again.
Here, finds from across London are brought to be washed, dried and catalogued. The same system is used for the thousands of finds from the Rose and Globe digs.
Come in here, where it'll all get dried out under control.
After 20 years' work, Julian and his team have just published their findings. The artefacts recovered offer us fascinating clues about life in Shakespeare's theatres.
Well, the interesting thing really about the Playhouse is that it's the beginning of modern theatre. These are purpose-built venues, and you had to go through a door and pay money, and this is what you paid. You paid a penny to get in to the main door, so you could stand in the centre, or you could pay another penny to get into the galleries around the edge, and a third one to sit at the top where you get the best view. So they all went into one of these ceramic money boxes, of which we've just got the lids.
So this would have been a completely sealed pot?
Oh, yes, like piggy banks. So they've got a little slot in the side there where the coin's going to go. And at the end of the day, they would have gone back to the sort of management area, if you like, which is where they were smashed. That's why we have the pieces. And the whole lot, all the money, emptied into a box, and that's the box office.
And is that where we get the term box office from then?
Absolutely,
these
yes.
Tudor theatres?
Yes. So a lot of the other evidence we're looking for is what people are consuming inside the building. We know about people who'd have the kind of the usherette's tray of pints of beer, even bottled beer.
Yeah.
And here we've got one of the most common comestibles that they've got are hazelnuts, found underneath the galleries around the edge.
So these hazelnuts are the popcorn and peanuts.
Absolutely,
of the Tudor
yes.
era.
It's the Tudor popcorn. And of course, the other new comestible that we find in the theatres is the evil weed. Tobacco that had only been brought to Britain about 30 years before, in the 1550s or so. And these very typical Tudor pipes, and they're all very tiny because I think it's probably related to the price of tobacco.
Right.
You can't fit much in there.
So this is the new fad?
It is, and certainly quite popular.
As well as objects associated with the audience, some of the finds might relate to the actors themselves.
This is a brush, a very tiny, delicate brush made of bone, a nice little bone handle, with just a fragment of its bristles left. The exciting thing about this is it's just the sort of brush that actors would use for makeup. And don't forget that Shakespeare was an actor as well. So we're looking at Shakespeare and his fellows probably rushing off to do the final bit of makeup before walking onto the stage, which is really rather nice.
Isn't that lovely?
But these stores also contain evidence of Elizabethan London's darker side. Outside the city walls, prostitution, gambling and brutal blood sports were commonplace.
Next to the playhouses on Bankside, there were animal baiting pits.
So right alongside the playhouses?
Yeah, next to the playhouses. And they had bears, horses that were being baited by very powerful mastiff dogs like this. This was found in one of the bear baiting rings next door to the Rose.
So do you think it would have been a different class of person that was going to the bear baiting and the theatre?
I'm afraid not. They regarded it all as part of an afternoon's entertainment. One of the interesting pieces we found is a bone. It's a femur, the upper thigh bone of a European brown bear. In fact, we found teeth marks here, which our faunal osteologists have identified as precisely the sort of teeth made by a mastiff.
And the playhouses and the bear baiting arenas were outside the city?
The city was becoming under increasingly puritanical jurisdiction, and these sorts of activities were slightly frowned upon by the city fathers. So they're very much situated outside the city, particularly in areas like Bankside. The plays, the blood sports, the brothels, the drinking dens, the gambling dens.
The seamier side of Tudor life.
Yes.
The archaeology of Tudor London gives us a real insight into the city during this period and allows us to peer more closely at all levels of society, from kings and queens down to the ordinary people. It's like Shakespeare's plays in that respect. We get to peer inside the royal palaces and look at the rabble who attended the bear baiting arenas and the playhouses. The digs and dives I've visited across Britain this year have allowed me to reach out and touch the men and women who lived during the Tudor age. The wealthy monks who once thrived in the now desolate ruins of Strata, Florida, and suffered the full fury of Henry VIII. The newly rich merchants and financiers who sent ships and crews to trade at the edges of the known world. And the men who fought and died for their king as the Mary Rose went to the bottom of the sea.
Isn't that amazing?
And most thrillingly of all, Shakespeare himself.
Send a bit of a shiver down the spine, doesn't it? But as always, archaeology has unearthed just as many questions as answers. And so the digging for Tudor Britain continues.